the last business ventures, which I had one before trucking as well. It's weird that when you get into things, you forget all the things that you did. And then when we actually started a personal and professional development company as well. And that's really, it's like the other ones are my passive income streams. And that's really what my project is. That's my project.
Okay.
So, and that's like fresh, like all the push for social media and all that stuff. That's really just been specifically to gain traction for that.
Personal development.
Personal and professional development.
Okay.
A lot of it's business, a lot of it's small businesses going in and, diagnosing issues that they have. A lot of them, it's like really common issues, and it's really obvious issues, but they're just nose blind to it because they're too close to it.
Yeah, and just like working out, how hard is it to work out? Like I always tell people, some people are looking for such complex information when it doesn't really need to be complex. You got to work out, you got to eat healthy, but you got to do it every single day for the next however many years to see results, and most people can't have the discipline to actually do it.
The crazy part is they can't even understand or comprehend what you're telling them unless they do it. And then they get 3-4 months in and they realize, oh yeah, there's something to this, because that's the truth.
I woke up to a guy this morning. He's like, hey man, and we're not started yet, but that's hey fine. Man, I need I'd like a refund. Things aren't working out for me in the Junk Academy. And it's always the people it's the cheapest clients, one, but it's also the people who don't, I go and do my due diligence before I respond to them. And with like ClickFunnels, which I can show you, I got my computer here.
Okay.
You can see the completion rate of all your training modules and, how much time they spent on that specific one, everything. So I can see everything. And then I'm like, hey, you completed, like I had a guy, he was like, hey man, this isn't working out. I went to go look at the course. 1% is what he completed. I'm like, dude.
Of the whole course?
Yeah, the whole course. I said, get your head out of your ass and, you got to complete the information.
Yeah.
And it's just like a constant trend of, hey man, I'm going to get it done this weekend. Nothing.
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 They don't follow through.
And
and what we talked about, I've seen you talk about it before, action. It's probably the number one thing that people lack. They don't take action. They set everything up. They have these giant aspirations, and then they don't take action. And that is the final piece of that puzzle of getting started. If you don't implement that, you fail to launch, So.
And I have a student who's like, he's doing probably $50,000 a month right now, young guy like myself. And I'm like, hey man, what can I change from everything that you completed on my side? How can I make it the best of the best? How can I get these people better results? What would you say? And he's like, oh, I think you could lean more on like, hey, you actually have to do the work. And for me, it's like, it's so easy to think like, that's common sense. Like, you got to hustle your ass off. You got to go knock on doors. You got to start cold calling. You got to go to networking groups.
Right.
They don't do it.
Right.
So
exactly what you just did is what you need to do for the next hour. That was the perfect example of exactly what we were just talking about.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, whenever you're ready, man, it's on
okay. You get a rollie on?
Fuck yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, me too.
Do you have any more?
No.
I'm a big watch guy, but I chose to buy the Lamborghini instead of buy something.
I'm not a huge
expensive.
watch guy. I got the car for a purpose. I got the watch for the purpose. You know what I mean? Everything's got a purpose. One day I think you'll have a little bit of an abundance just for the fun of it, but it all has a purpose these days.
And I'll start off there, but one of my buddies, actually now one of my buddies, but I went to this yacht mastermind and there was a 98 foot yacht. We get on there. I don't know anybody on there other than the one guy that I paid to be on the yacht. And I see this guy with a Patek Philippe Nautilus on. The only guys you see wear those are the biggest guys, in the game right now on social media and, entrepreneurs. It's not, Rolex probably has a bigger name. Like people would recognize that.
Sure.
It's like, kind of like a silver band and then blue face. And I looked at it and I was like, who is this guy? Like this guy must be crushing it. I mean, that's a, 200.
And I'm assuming you can spot a real one from a fake one, correct? Because I don't know them that well, but there's some people that are like, oh yeah, I can tell this is off, that's off. And like they know right away.
Yeah, probably not, honestly. I could probably be fooled. I don't know what to look at. And I think the fakes these days are so good to where, it's just so hard to tell.
Yep.
But I was dying to meet this guy. And that's when I realized, like, hey, you got to have a watch because it's a conversation starter. And I went up to the guy, and he's like, yeah, I've got a green one. I've got, Rolex, rainbows, and I've got all these other stuff.
Yeah.
And I actually went to his house, and he showed me Richard Milles, and I assumed that they were all real.
Sure.
I don't know. And, he had one watch that was $1.2 million, and I was like, why do you have all these watches? And he's like, man, I could have $250,000 in the bank account, but I got a $500,000 watch on. And Mark Cuban could be in the room, which was the real example that he gave me. Start having conversation with him. Hey, man, I love your watch. So you see a lot of big people in the game. They all have nice watches. You know, it's a conversation starter.
And it seems pretentious, I think, and to like normal people, just everyday people think, oh, that's really pretentious. But when you get onto a certain level in business, those conversation pieces open up doors to can be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of conversation. You have no clue where that conversation or that relationship would go, you know? So for me, it's always getting in the right rooms, and sometimes there's always a price to pay to get in the right rooms, and then getting noticed. That watch, that suit, that whatever you have on, that's a validation piece to people who are watching. And so rather you have $250,000 in the bank and you got a $500,000 watch on, nevertheless you got a $500,000 watch on. So that gives you some validity, and people want to know what you're all about, what you're up to. So if you have something interesting to talk about, and you have something that you want to, you know, pass forward, I think it's worth investing in yourself. It's worth investing in those things, contrary to popular belief, because they do open up those conversations and they do allow you to meet people. I know personally for the last 2 years, investing in myself in that way has allowed me to get in rooms that I could have never even dreamed. Like, you would just be like, oh, that'd be great one day. But you actually get in those rooms and talk to those people and become really good friends with some of them. And you're like, wow, I need to do more of this. Like, this is, and not to mention the evolution of yourself in doing that and how it boosts your confidence and everything. It's incredible.
And I want to say this story too, because this was like a pivotal moment for me. I went to, a guy's house that we both know, and he was like, hey, Kyle, you want to come over? I got 2 guys coming to town. I was like, all right. And they get there. These guys have no idea who I am. They haven't seen the social media. They don't know what I've done. So I got the vibe that they didn't really care to talk to me in general when they were looking to start a business. And they were talking about watches and stuff like that, and Daytonas and Rolexes and all this sort of thing. And I felt like I had no credibility because I didn't have any of this stuff on, to where if I had, even a $10,000 Rolex on, they would have came to me and be like, what do you even do for a living? Right. And then it's a conversation starter.
Exactly. So, I think that's really key, and it's something that some people miss out. And funny that some guys do it for themselves. Like, I've been to car meets and stuff where these guys dress a certain way, but they don't want to talk business. Like, they just want to relax. This is something that they're doing because they just want to relax. And I know you've mentioned this before, and I'm kind of this way too. Like, I just like to talk business. I love business. So when I'm talking about what you're doing or what you're into or what you're looking at doing next, these guys want to talk about your family. They want to talk about your kids. They want to talk about, your career a little bit, but they don't really want to talk business. Whereas for me, I enjoy that. So I have learned that where you might still always want to represent yourself correctly, you can't always just jump into business with people, because some people, it turns them off. They in the wrong rooms, the wrong time, it turns them off. So you got to put yourself in the right situation, in the right room, set up to do those things.
You got to lead up to it.
Yeah, and then you also don't come off as like too much if you show up at a place like that and you're like, you overdid it. So
I want to bring up something. I'm going to take this in right field here, but okay. You like talking about business. Mm-hmm. You obviously have a wife, I believe.
I do, yeah.
Are you always trying to talk business with her? And is she like, hey, you need to leave that aside? Because I'm always the same way. I'm like, what'd you do today? Oh, well, and all I want to do is just talk about work all night. And it's like, sometimes I got to start talking about other things.
Right. So I have been bad about that. And when you're growing and you're really working on some ventures that you're like very deep into, because you know how it is, you get so enthralled in what you're doing that's consuming your mind. Sometimes you don't even go to sleep. Like, it's just keeps you up. So she's always been a trooper in that aspect, and she's actually always been the catalyst that pushes me to do great things. She really has. I've been with her for over 20 years. We've been married for 15. She's been a huge pivotal portion of my life, and she is a business partner of mine as well in some of our ventures. So she never shuts me down when we're talking about business, but I can see her shift it like, well, so-and-so, we had this at dance today, or we got this going on this weekend, or family stuff, or holidays, and I pick up on that now. I used to be really bad about not doing it. But after following some other mentors, doing some personal development stuff myself, I've noticed that you really do need to make a disconnect, because if you don't, you're actually translating that over to your kids as well. So then when I'm in the car, one of my favorite things to do, I talk about this on my channel, is when I take my kids to school in the morning. I get an hour, a little over an hour with them, that we can just talk about like how their day was yesterday, or what they're planning on doing today. Or if I've got that phone in my hand and I'm messing with drivers, or I'm messing with dispatching, or I'm messing with emails, or I'm looking at social media, I am missing out on a portion of life that I'm never going to get back from them. You know, I mean, that's my time with them, and they value that time. And so I have learned to try to put that away and focus just on them. It is difficult at times still. Things pop up. You have to deal with them. They understand. They've always been understanding, but I don't think it's fair to them to just be like, well, they understand. Because even though they do, it's still not fair to them.
Yeah, you got to be presentable, you know, or you got to be present.
Yeah, present.
You know, I always hang out with, you know, my girl who's, you know, almost 11 months now, and we'll hang out in the playroom, and it's so easy for me to want to get on Instagram. Like, all my money, all my income is off social media.
Sure.
So it might look like I'm doing unproductive stuff, you know, and then she looks at me, and it's just like, sometimes it breaks my heart, because she gives me that look like, hey, why aren't you playing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, actively every single time I'm trying to get better at, you know, becoming more present and hanging out with her. And you go out to dinner, you could go to Red Robin, and you see a family, and everyone's just sitting on their phones. They got the, you know, the headsets on, playing games. And yeah, that's definitely,
my family does it. You know, you got little kids. I got 4 kids.
You got to keep them busy, you know, otherwise they might want to go run around the place. I mean, we get into some Miss Rachel as well. I don't know if you ever watched.
Not know. What's that?
You never heard of that?
I've never heard of that.
Miss Rachel is like a girl who has a YouTube channel. I mean, this girl's killing the game. These videos have like 500 million views. And
what is she doing?
She posts like kid videos, like you know, baby videos, and just like sings, you know, Wheels on the Bus and stuff like that. So, you know, if we're trying to clean the house, or, you know, we got people coming over, like, we'll throw that on, and, you know, she's pretty dialed. But you see a lot of people watch her.
It is Coco Melon and Bluey at our house.
Okay.
And Paw Patrol nonstop. Because I got a 3.5-year-old that just eats that stuff up. Well, and I got a 10-month-old, and she'll watch that. So sometimes when you're just trying to get something cleaned, or you're trying to get something together, or you're trying to get ready to be somewhere, you just need their attention redirected. But to add to what you said earlier, it is important still to make sure that you separate our business life from our personal life, and give them that attention that they do deserve, you know, like soul attention.
Right.
And so, like, we do date nights now. That was something that I didn't used to do much in the past. We didn't have time. You know, we have the kids, but we made it a point about 1.5 years to make sure we're doing date nights. Tonight I have one. So we'll go up to some VIP event at this place she likes to shop in Kirkwood, and then we'll leave, and we're going to go eat at the Twisted Tree. And so we have these, we make it a priority for each other. And we've always been super close. We've never fought. We've never, like, it's weird. She's my best friend. She honestly is my best friend. And as tight as we've always been and understanding, I don't think that's always fair. Even though they understand, it doesn't make it fair. It doesn't make it fair that they're willing to just sacrifice all the time, knowing that what you're doing for them is the best thing. I think you got to give that back. But I've been more conscientious of it probably in the last 1.5 years than I ever have been before. Before, it was just like, hey, it is what it is. You know what I'm doing? I'm grinding. And they accepted that, and they understood that. And I burned it into them for so long that now that things have slowed down a little bit, I'm allowed to be around a lot more, they still think that way. Like, we learned to do life without you. You weren't here that much. So just because you're here doesn't mean we're all going to stop what we're doing and just pay attention to you. You know, I've heard other people say that, and like, I felt it deep, because I'm like, yeah, I understand that. I appreciate you guys understanding, but, you know, I need to give you that time back. You know, that's important. It's important to you guys. It's important to me. So
I think when I became, you know, a dad in January of this year, you know, I was 22 at the time. I had no idea what was coming. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is, like, how I value my time. I think that's when I really started valuing my time, because in order to make sure my relationship at home was good, you know, also I could spend time with my daughter, that sort of thing. Like, say I work from, you know, in the morning until 5 p.m. That's kind of the schedule that I have, my own little 9 to 5. And, you know, I'm very intentional with that time, where before I could have a conversation with somebody on the phone for an hour that it really isn't a needle moving conversation right? Or just talking to, like, I'd be in my office and I'd be talking to everybody about just what's going on this weekend and stuff like that. And it was, you just got to get rid of that stuff, and everything is so intentional where you can get a whole lot done. You don't have to work, all day long.
Right, because I think we just consume ourselves in it, and that just is what it is. That's like, it becomes our identity. We're businessmen, we're running this company. Like you said, everything's on social media for you. Well, the future of every business is really going to social media, and if you don't have a presence there, you're going to fail. So, I mean, I don't want to say you're going to fail, but it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, it's going to get harder and harder for those people. You have to learn to adapt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of older people. The reason why I started Rise Media is because it pisses me off talking to certain people where they're like, they joined my Junk Academy, for example, and they're like, hey, I want to grow my business. How do I do it? It's like, okay, this is the strategy that I used on social media, on Facebook and LinkedIn and that sort of thing to grow my business. Do this every single day. Here's the exact framework. And then, less than 1% would actually do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in front of the camera. I'm scared of what people think of me. Yep. It's just like, and it makes it that much easier for you if you're actually trying to grow on social media, especially in your own niche.
Right. And something that I did, and this was unintentional, but I spent, probably 10 years on Facebook without a face. Like, you could comb through my Facebook and you would never find my face. Not my family, not mine, nothing. It was all content. It was all motivational stuff, things I believed in my trucking company. And I did that intentionally because me and my family's whole outlook on that was, we didn't want people knowing what we had going on. That's our life. I want to follow everybody else on here, but I don't want to, put all my stuff out there. Well, then came the time where I felt like I had accomplished enough that I wanted to share, and I sat down and had to have a long conversation with my wife about, hey, like, I'm going to have to step out from behind this cloak of anonymity, and I'm going to have to show my face. I'm going to have to put a face. I would show up to a company to buy, say I went to a trucking company to purchase 5 trucks, okay? I was going to drop like $500,000. I went with my number one guy in the company, put a hoodie on just like him. We walked in. They knew him because he used to work there years ago. They thought I was just a grease monkey that was with him. They didn't know who I was. I knew the owner of that company, had talked to him in his office before I went back there, but they didn't know me, I was fine with that. I've always been fine with that. So we go through, he's showing us the trucks, he's speaking very candidly, and I know if there's going to be any issues or nonsense with these things, he's going to just throw it out there like, I don't know what this guy thinks he's getting into, but these are pieces of junk. Like, he's going to talk like that because he doesn't have the pressure of knowing I'm the one buying them, right? We go through the whole thing, look at all the trucks, fire them all up, do our whole thing. We're there for like an hour and a half, and we leave. About 2 hours later, my guy calls me and he's like, hey, Nick, which was the guy we were seeing when we were there, he said he was wanting to know who you were, and I told him you were somebody who just worked here. So we set up another meeting to go back for a second look, and he introduced himself and started talking a little bit differently to me. Well, I found out later he went back to the owner of the company and was telling who was there, and the owner's like, oh, yeah, that's the guy that's buying the trucks. So then his whole tune changed. Well, I don't like that. But so for some purposes, I decided not to put my face out there originally. But then as we went to social media and realized you need to put a little bit of especially if you're going to put yourself out there, in a professional and a personal development type of way, people need to know who they're dealing with. They need to know who's Bobby Guiney. They need to know who that person is.
Yeah.
So.
And when you went on this podcast today, what did you do? You did a little due diligence. Hey, so you could almost see people and understand who they are before you even meet them.
Yeah, and that's the great part. So I know if I ever run into any of these people, which I should, they're in our network, I'm going to know a little bit of a backstory about them. I'm going to know what they're into, and there's going to be conversation there to be had because I don't have to start doing the digging from the get-go, That's why I think these podcasts are so wonderful. You get to get a little bit of an insight into what people have going on personally and professionally. And then, because when they first started coming out, I'm like, well, who's this person? When I first saw you, I'm like, who's this guy? You know what I mean? But I'm always inquisitive. Like, I want to know. I don't want to hate. I want to know. And
right.
Knowledge is power. I'm like, so who is this guy? Because he could just be another fraud like some of these other guys out here, or he might be somebody that's really making some moves. But unless you inquire and really do some digging and try to figure it out, you might miss an opportunity to meet some good people because you assumed they were just somebody out there trying to jump on a fad. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So what you did with social media is basically what you said is you earned your credibility, and maybe you didn't do this on purpose because social media wasn't always that big.
Yeah.
You put in the work, you created success, and then you said, hey, for me to move further, I'm going to get on social media. I want to throw this out there that people who are actually watching this, like, you don't need to be necessarily credible. Like, you don't need to have accomplished, like, you don't need to make $1 million a year. You don't need to make $100,000 a year. Like, you just need to start making content. You know, my girlfriend, for example, she wants to get into, like, you know, beauty side of business, we'll call it, facials and, you know, eyelashes and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, you should start building your brand now. You should start creating content now. And she kind of gives me that approach of like, oh, well, I need to start doing all of these things to set myself up to do that, when, like, my biggest regret, this is my biggest regret, is not sharing my story sooner. And one of my mentors, who's way bigger than me, way more successful than me, he said, Kyle, you don't understand how much easier it is for you to sell your products than me, because they see me with the mansion, the Rolls Royce, the yachts, all this stuff, where you're a relatable guy. So I wish I could, you know, and also you said the word fraud, right? Like, I was the guy who was in the trenches, in the pit, you know, shoveling dirt out of basements, and I was doing all those things, but people can't necessarily see a lot of that because I didn't document it. To where if I would have so much incredible content, you know, me doing demo jobs, like being there 14 hours a day, walking out with dirt all over my face and picking black boogers and, you know, stuff like that. It's like I was doing the hard work, but it's hard for people to see that because I didn't document it.
Yeah, and I think success, like we've talked about, is defined differently by everybody. And as far as putting that work in, my intentions were never to like prove anything to anybody. And anything that I posted online was just basically to give a little bit of credit back to my workers, back to my team for the things that they have done, and then to grow a presence for clients. You know, hey, this company's out here, and then, you know, your branding of your company so that you can pick up clients. But I think that documenting, if that's your intentions from the get-go, documenting that process now, like you said, where you're dirty, where you're in the trenches, on the front lines with your guys, or by yourself, like building from nothing to scaling to however big you want to go, documenting that is important because all the eyeballs are on the internet right now. You don't have people standing around staring at you. They're all on the internet wanting to know what you're all about. And if they find you out and about, and they see you in a nice car or something like that, they're immediately going to be like, hey, what's your name? And then they're going to go look you up. And so if you're documenting this process, they've just taken all those questions off the table. They already know what you're all about and what you do. And if it's something that might be relatable to them or something that might be beneficial to them, then they're going to tap you as a resource, right? So I think I don't regret not, because I documented my process. I just documented it for me, not of me. Like, it wasn't a process, but I have got pictures of almost every load of cars I ever hauled when I was hauling cars. I got loads of all the flatbed. Like one time I moved, these pictures showed up the other day is why it was interesting. I moved a brewery from downtown St. Louis out to their new location. So I'm downtown on the city streets loading barrels of beer on these big metal stands on a flatbed. And mind you, if I move too hard while we're transporting these, it'll blow the corks out of them, and fermented beer is going to go flying everywhere because they're under pressure. And so they have them all taped shut and stapled, and the guy's telling me how to do it. And I'm watching this process, and then I'm going through my mind remembering, well, that company's called Alpha Brewing, and they're still in business. I still get calls from the guy. They scaled really, really big, and that move is, but I'm like, I was a part of that process. And I documented it for me, but I haven't put it all together and like kind of put it out there for other people, because I do have a lot of people that get a hold of me like, hey, I've been thinking about doing trucking. Like, how do I get into it? And it's a different game now than it was then, but that grind, people need to see that grind, because all they see now is us telling them about it. Hey, you got to do this. You got to do it like this. Are you telling me because you did that? Or are you telling me because that's what everybody else is saying you got to do?
Right. Did you see that video? I know that you saw the video of, like, you know, it's kind of a trend right now, and it's like a clown emoji, and it's like, good luck with that little business. And then it just like hits, which we tried to, like, I gave them like a camera roll full of like 1,000 photos. So they put a bunch of random stuff in there. Yeah. But it's got like 700,000 views right now. Is it
the one where you're in a suit and you're like vacationing, walking around looking real professional? Yeah. But it was you as a young kid, like, you know, just sitting there in your house, like, Just
I
working
was
9 to 5, grinding it out.
Yeah, with my yellow, my
Yeah.
neon shirt on.
Yep.
But you should. I know that you created a video similar to
Yeah.
that. But you should try different, photos and stuff like that, and then have
I
the
did
McLaren.
of the trucks, but I haven't of like myself, because like even pictures online, I don't have a lot of pictures. I was always me taking the pictures, and I wasn't taking selfies. I was taking pictures of my loads. I was taking pictures of where I was at or what I was doing. I got pictures I seen the other day of like the trucks loaded down with cars, and it was a load that might have took me 3 hours to get configured and put on, and the moon is real above the truck, real big, because it was like midnight. And and then I drive 2 or 3 hours out to a little town, this town I used to stop on my route, and I'd pull behind the gas station. I would sleep for 3 hours in the cab of the truck. Then I get back up and I head onto my route. I mean, the grind, I didn't document myself in the grind. It could be like anybody's in that truck, but I documented the grind. You know what I mean?
So let's get into your story a little bit. Tell everybody a little bit about, kind of your story, where you're at right now.
Okay. So as far as my business story goes, I started in trucking in 2012, but before trucking, I actually started a little company called RLG Custom Enclosures. So what I did was I did little woodworking, and I built custom grade, like furniture grade enclosures for people's reptiles and stuff. So like these people, I'd go to trade shows, and they'd be like, I had some of these pets, thousands and thousands of dollars they would spend on these designer pets. And then they'd put them in a glass cage in a back room. And I was like, I see a market here of people that would like something that was nice enough to put in their living room where they could show it off when friends and stuff came over, because they really like valued this animal. They liked it. And I liked doing woodworking. And I was into it at that point in time myself. So I started building these furniture grade. I was doing a custom order. I was doing spec cages. I was going to trade shows here in St. Louis, peddling these things. I did all that, did well with it. But the time that it took to build these things versus what these people were willing, they'll spend thousands of dollars on a pet. They don't want to spend but a couple $100 on a cage. But I mean, you would have lots of hours in these cages, making them right. So anyway, I got an opportunity. That was kind of a side hustle as I was going through college. And then I had an opportunity in 2012 to get a contract with a company out of St. Louis called Seva Logistics. And it was a box truck owner-operator company that just did like commercial and residential deliveries. A lot of it was for like Dell and Lenovo and Amazon and TVs, things like that, Christmas stuff, just treadmills, all the stuff like UPS and FedEx didn't want to move, right? So took a chance on that, got the opportunity handed to me, and then I took a chance, basically everything I had left to be able to get the down payment to purchase the truck, and found a truck at Ryder, and we did that. We scaled to a semi-truck within 8 months of being there. And the reason I did that is there was no other semi-trucks there. So I talked to management, and they're like, we have some deliveries at these stores. We also did Office Depot at the time. Office Depot, we brought all their product in. They wrapped it, sorted it by the stores, and then we delivered to every Office Depot in St. Louis and Illinois, kind of like over on the east side, Edwardsville, kind of over that area. So I think I had, at the time, I might have had like close to 20 stores. Well, they found out they could either split those up and put them on all these box trucks, and then that was space that was taken up that they couldn't put more freight on those trucks, or they could get the semi-truck load almost all the stores on one truck and then just pay me to go run all of them in a route. So I went and I sold my box truck and I bought a semi-truck. And then when I was doing that, I lived down in Sullivan, Missouri. Well, that job was out of Bridgeton. Well, there's an hour and 15-minute drive back and forth between the two. So I bought a Ram ProMaster van, and after I'd run my semi-truck all day, I'd load that van up with home deliveries, and I'd do home deliveries all the way back to my house.
For like Amazon and, okay.
Yeah, for Amazon, and they did Walmart distribution centers in St. James. So a lot of times they would schedule that for a Friday. I would load a bunch of stuff in there, do it all the way down. Then I would go to St. James, do Walmart, and then I would go home. And then in the morning, I would do pickups all the way back to Bridgeton in the morning. So I was basically making money coming, making money going, like trying to maximize my time and as efficiently as I possibly could, which in the end, and I'll speed this up a little bit, but in the end it grew to I didn't want to operate under that company anymore. And so I left there, went to a company called Fleet Car. I leased onto them with my semi-truck, had to buy an auto hauler. And then I grew through auto hauling. I went with like 3 cars, then I went to a 5 car, then I went to a 7 car, then I went to a 9 car. I did that for about 2.5 years.
9 cars on one truck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went from having like a truck and a trailer to having a full truck trailer combination that was just 4 cars.
All right, I'm curious here. Because I saw one of these trucks the other day, and I saw like some pretty nice cars in there, and I was like, I wonder if they keep all of the keys of these cars like on that truck, or if they just mail them.
So they're all on the truck because you have to
Okay.
be able to move these cars on and off. Either if DOT says you're overweight somewhere, you have to be able to reconfigure your cars, or you got to load them and unload them. I load and unload my own trucks. Certain vehicles only fit in certain positions. Every spot on that truck, if it's a 9 car, 1 through 9 is a position, and you count that as that spot 1, 2, 3, and only certain length wheelbase cars will fit in those positions. Certain weights of certain cars can only be put in certain positions.
And majority of the weight has to be on the front with those, correct?
Well, no, not necessarily, because you're only allowed like 12,000 pounds on your steers. So you don't actually want to over, because that you got motor, engine, truck, and everything already on that axle, and then you're going to put a car up there. So really, it's like a 30-30-30 split. You want to spread it out across the whole truck. Typically, the trailer ends up being heavy if anything's going to be heavy. The weight ends up being sitting out over the trailer axles is what happens. All the big stuff ends up in the back.
So me doing junk removal, I never knew anything about trailers or anything like that. We were doing a job. There was a bunch of construction debris in the garage, and we were just shoveling with snow shovels, shoveling plaster into trash cans, and then it didn't really take up any space in the trailer, and we're dumping it over the back of the trailer. And I get on the highway, and this thing starts whipping all over the place. I mean, that was probably one of the most scary moments in my life. And I saw an example of they had like a little treadmill online, like a video. You probably saw it, and they tap the back and they put weight. That's something I wish I would have known is, kind of like you said, 30-30-30, or majority of that weight, kind of like you need to be very strategic about it. You can't just throw whatever in, because that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. And it is a bit of a knack. It's weight distribution is what that is. And you're allowed a DOT certified weight per axle, and then we are allowed personally what we prefer on those axles. The way I load my tractors now when we're doing anything is you stick under that 12,000 for your steers. You try to put the majority of the weight on the drives and then the rest of it on the trailer. If you overload the trailer, you're going to end up with that sway because your weight distribution's to the back. So then what happens is the trailer drives the truck instead of the truck driving the trailer. So you end up with 2-inch weight behind the axles is what happens, especially on single axle trailers. It's really, really bad on a single axle trailer. So on tractor trailers, you basically, take for instance, I'll give you an example. I got a 53-foot dry van trailer. Say they're going to put all kinds of home goods on it, and they're going to put like concrete blocks on it. They tell me I have 8 skids of concrete blocks. Each one of those skids weighs like 4,000 pounds, 4,500 pounds. So I'm going to tell them, put 2 up in the nose, load some freight, put 2 more, load some freight, put 2 more, load some freight, tail load the last 2. Or I'll have them put 4 really close to over those axles of that trailer, like do the other 2 like that, 4 over the axle of the trailer, and then light freight to the back. And then what that'll do is it'll shift weight to the front of the truck, and they drive a lot better when you have them on the drives of the truck. You don't want too much on the steers. You don't want too much on the trailer. You're better off to have the majority of that weight between the rear of the truck and the trailer, majority of it pushing towards the truck. And everything just seems to scale out and drive smooth right there.
So how many trucks do you have on the road right now?
Right now I have 8 on the actual road. I've got 9 trucks total. We use 1 as a backup.
Okay.
So
do they break down a lot?
they do.
Yeah, so. Tell me a little bit about your experience for people who are wanting to start one of these companies. Should they go finance a truck that's, I don't know what they cost, 150 grand, or should they go buy the used one?
Okay. Me personally, I would, especially because when people are starting out, they're usually an owner operator, so they're a single truck operation. If you're going to be a single truck operation, I would highly recommend that you buy a pre-emissions truck, a little bit older, and all that mechanical work needs to have paperwork. You need to know what's been done to that truck. I tell people I would rather take that, because I used to run a lot of old Peterbilts, pre-emissions trucks, Cat engines. That's what we loved. I said I would take that truck that had 1.6 million miles on it with an overhaul and verifiable paperwork before I'd take that truck that has 600,000 original miles. I don't want that truck. That truck is a problem waiting to happen. That other one has been ran through, the first set of what was good on it. Everything's been rebuilt. It's all verifiable, and now I know that is a truck that I can put on the road, and it's going to run and run and run because it's been put through its paces. It's been verified.
So these trucks go 1 million miles.
Oh my! These trucks go multi-million miles. I had seen trucks go. I had seen one time. It was on its third rebuild. It had over 3 million miles on it. The chassis had over 3 million miles. The motor had been rebuilt 3 times. That one individual motor had been rebuilt 3 times.
And they're all diesel?
Yeah.
What do you think about Tesla with the electric semis?
I think it's a joke. personally.
Okay.
I think that they want to push it that way. The problem is our technology just it's not ready for it. The grid's not ready for it. They don't factor in cold weather. They'll tell you they do, but they don't. And everyone that I've ever seen on the road is either being hauled to its destination or being towed. I haven't seen one pulling a trailer yet to success. It just, I don't think you can take the human element out of it either. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to automate all that. But, you know, somebody told me yesterday, just as a side note, because we're talking about electronics and automation, Walmart is finding out that their self-checkouts are costing them more money in maintenance than putting a person at the register. So now they're wanting to start reversing that and going back to the way things were.
Huh.
How about that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the way it will happen if we try to go to all electric trucks and that kind of stuff. The range isn't there, cold weather, batteries, and I've been told that there's not technicians that are adequately trained to actually fix these issues. So they'll have an issue, it goes to get fixed, and nobody knows how to fix it. They're like, we don't, I mean, the engineers are the only ones that might know how to fix this. The mechanics are like, we don't have enough proper training.
I just don't, you know, if AI and, you know, all AI and technology starts replacing all of these jobs, it makes me wonder where, you know, like, what are people going to do? If people start losing jobs, like, what is this world going to look like?
I don't know.
You know, it's scary.
It's kind of scary.
It is very scary to think about.
Yeah, because, I mean, there's always got to be a puppet master, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, take, for instance, I went into White Castle and they automated their burger like processing area. Instead of having 3 people there working on the line, they had a machine. Machine was cooking all the burgers. They had 2 people in there. So I'm like, it takes 2 people to operate what 6, 7 people were doing before. What happens to all those other people? We can't just keep doling out money and handing them money and stuff, you know, to not work or not be a puppet master or not be somebody inventing something or being a productive member of society. You got to be a productive member of society. Then what?
Well, I think a lot of these, especially restaurants or fast food chains, they have such bad issues with employees. Like, not many people want to go and work at McDonald's anymore, that sort of thing. And
I think they're too good for it.
Yeah,
I think they're too good to skip that.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, I should be the manager here if I come in here. I'm not supposed to be flipping burgers.
Yeah, and people don't show up, and there's a big turnover rate to where they're probably, you know, the head people at McDonald's and these fast food chains, they're probably dying to figure out a solution to put AI in the business or robots or something like that, so they don't have to deal with those issues anymore.
And I would assume for certain chains and certain aspects of business, that's actually going to be very beneficial. AI is going to be very beneficial. Full automation will be very beneficial. But taking people out of a process completely and making it fully automated, I just don't see that being a possibility in my lifetime. Could easily be in my grandkids or my kids' time. I just don't see it being in mine. And the semi-trucks, I don't ever see that being fully taken over in my lifetime.
Do you use any AI right now?
I do a little bit. I think you had mentioned once about that ChatGPT. Yeah, I use that quite often when I have questions or I want statistics and analytics, and then I'll go to the internet and I'll try to back it up. I've never found it to be wrong. I'm always able to back up what it says, and so that's a very dangerous thing. But it's also a very awesome thing in a lot of ways if used correctly. So
you know, everyone knows that it exists right now, or a lot of people do. And what I've learned in the past few months, because I would use it once, I'd ask it one question, but what made me not really know how to use the software to my advantage is like, you need to learn how to talk to it. Right now, you have a lot of knowledge, I have a lot of knowledge, we have a conversation. Why can't you have that same exact conversation with ChatGPT and sit there for an hour?
Right.
So I've literally sat there for an hour and had a whole conversation back and forth, you know, and it's just crazy what it can do. And, you know, the way that you prompt it and tell it how to respond, you know, as well. And like,
your wording makes a difference. The way that you ask the question prompts the response. I mean, you literally can just flip one word around and you get a different response because it understands what you're actually asking for, versus it speaks a lot generically too, which I hate because I'm asking for specific answers to things and it's generically giving me an answer. I'm like, comb the internet and find me what somebody else said and let me take a culmination of what everybody else said. But I think it has the possibility. I think it's probably a liability reason that they don't do it. Well, it's probably built in.
You know, and if I ask it a question, hey, write me how to scale a junk removal company to $10,000 a month. It's going to spit something out very generic. But then what I can do is I can go on that first section and I want to say, hey, write me, you know, more about that. And I want it long and I want it very detailed. To where it takes time. You know, I'm not a patient person at all. And that was like, I wasn't patient, so I'd ask it one answer. That's a generic answer. I'm gone.
Yep.
Where I would fully go in and ask ask questions and have it build it out and that sort of thing.
Yep.
For different things, not exactly what I just said.
But you can have full conversations, like you said. You can literally just candidly speak to it instead of trying to form a question so that you make sure that it understands. You can just speak to it and it'll come up with it.
And you can control the tonality of the way that the copy comes out as well. Like I could say, hey, act as if I was Grant Cardone, and I want you to write me a motivational speech on, my life in 2023, right? Mm-hmm. And that, like, I tell ChatGPT, hey, this is exactly who I am. Like, I probably spent an hour of saying, here's what my story looks like.
Yeah.
So that information's always there, and then I can go back and when I ask questions, it knows exactly who I am, and it gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. So then it answers questions just like that, but I can change the tonality to make it sound, where you could say, hey, write me a highly engaging, piece of copy or email template that's going to make people want to book a call.
Sure.
What I did in the past 60 days, we'll say, is I really didn't. You oftentimes put your blinders on of who your actual perfect customer is. Like, right. I feel like I put my blinders on, and I'm just like focused on anybody who wants my product. Sure. Where there is a perfect customer. To where I had a brainwashed mindset of like, oh, I attract people who aren't entrepreneurs. They don't have any money. They just like poor mindset, that sort of thing. But that's my culture, that's my community, is who I'm attracting.
You figured that was your demographic?
Yeah, and that's who I figured it was. And then I was dealing with constant issues of people not having money and, the certain copy that I had, I was dealing with, I was attracting certain people to where then I went back and I was like, hey, who's paid me like the most amount of money possible? And every single customer that I had that was the best client I've ever worked with, like they got results. I told ChatGPT everything that they needed to know about my customers. And I said, here's the different price points that I have. I'm trying to get more of those customers. Mm-hmm. Tell me the demographic of these customers. And it told me exactly who I needed. Yeah. And in the past 30 days, here's the results that I've got is we adjusted our targeting for ads, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So we're attracting 30 to 50-year-olds who are in the United States outside of New Jersey, and they have some sort of entrepreneurship background or real estate. So we're targeting those people. My average ticket on the front end, cash collected, increased from $3,200 to $10,000 in 30 days just by that simple.
I'd be darned.
Yeah. So, and we're selling less customers, which is really my goal.
Better quality customers.
Yeah, but way better quality customers.
Which I think is the end result, the end goal, I should say, when you're trying to do this, or you're trying to scale something, because that same issue that you originally had is the issue that I had in my industry with trucking, because truckers are just not known to be very smart people or very educated people or very ambitious people, for that matter. In fact, they're usually obese, overweight, and eat like crap, talk like crap. They got all these awesome things about them that everybody's like, oh, you ever been to a truck stop for 5 minutes? It's just awful. So I've never gotten that detailed with it. What I usually do is just ask it something to give me a blanket statement and maybe structure that, like some framing, and then I plug and play what it is that I specifically want to say in it. I've never actually worded it to try to get it to give me exactly what it is that I'm looking for and see if it matches up or just tweak a couple words or whatever. I know my son, he said, Dad, check this out. There's a new business we were opening. He said, write me, how did he put it? He said, write me a opening statement for a web page for this specific company. And said the name of the company, what we sold, all that. And it wrote this huge description that I don't think I could find but 2 discrepancies that I would have changed in it whatsoever. It was perfect. I showed it to my wife. I said, check this out. And she said, did Dominic write that? I said, no, the AI did. Dominic just told it what to do. She's like, that's
in seconds.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it like bubbles for a second and then boom, you have everything. So I think it's an awesome thing. I think AI in general, obviously, is the future. It's the future, period. So we have to figure out how do we leverage that and use it now. It's kind of like if you miss the Bitcoin thing, if you miss all these different waves of all these big things that happen, you need to be able to recognize that even though we might fight it, in which your generation, you're younger than me, so your generation kind of takes that all in a lot better than mine does. My generation will accept it, but fights it a little bit. Obviously, people above me are just like, I don't want anything to do with a computer. I don't know how to mess with computers. But even I can recognize the fact that that technology and AI and automation and everything electronic is the way things are going to go. And if you don't evolve now and kind of figure out how to put that into your system, I mean, you're going to fail.
And the name AI or artificial intelligence is sexy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the sexiest things out there.
Yeah.
To where I spent 15 grand on some software that had AI in it to where like it'll dial people all day long and it can act as me, like my actual voice.
I got
it sounds just like me, to where you could be talking to me on the phone.
Yeah.
That gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter, talking to customers, right? Handling their objections, that sort of thing, to try to get them to book a call with my team. And it just gets smarter and smarter and smarter, to where if you put an employee in there who complains, they take a lunch break, they're working at home, like the AI, all it knows is one thing, right? Yeah, work.
So
and
do you ever look at that and think it's dangerous, like the movie iRobot? Like, do you ever look at, like, because it does learn. It learns and it gets smart. And I've actually heard that they have built robots that they put this in that they had to shut down because it was doing stuff off command. It was just learning and being like, no, I don't really care what you're telling me to do because I feel like I know this is what the right thing is to do. And then it would just do its own thing. It was learning stuff that was never taught, languages, stuff like that. I can see where if we're not careful, like, that's a real possibility. It's a dangerous possibility.
Yeah, I think it's scary as can be now, and they've already kind of, they control how much we can actually use it because of how powerful it is. Mm-hmm. You could put websites on, and don't quote me on this, I know the people in the comments, but I'm pretty sure you could put websites on, AI before and say, hey, tell me how I can, get into this website and hack it, and it goes through the code, and then that's why it started to get like a little regulated, is because it could do things like that.
I know you can ask it specific questions about making money and it won't answer them. It won't give you the actual numbers or the actual procedure to do specifically what you asked it to do. It just speaks generically, which is frustrating for people who just want an answer. But I get it, because it is super dangerous if they don't put that technology stop in there. Basically, it's going to learn more than we wanted it to learn, and then it's just going to overtake things if we're not careful.
And you see a lot of people, like, you don't know what content is real now. Like, somebody could take us talking right now,
right,
and then eliminate everything that we say.
You seen Joe Rogan's podcast and stuff?
Joe Rogan and Elon
Musk. He's
Musk
pushing like ED meds and stuff like that. I'm like, he didn't do that, but it looks like he is. His mouth's moving, his mannerisms, they've tied it all together. I'm like,
it looks perfect.
Looks perfect.
And a lot of these ads you see as well, like, I could be sitting in this chair and post a perfect ad. Like, there's something in the coaching business or funnel world called VSLs. I mentioned it to you. It's like a video sales letter qualifying your customers. Mm-hmm. I just bought this other software to where AI, it's integrated with this VSL software, to where I can go on there and I can actually tell it, write me, this is what I do for a living. This is the customer I'm trying to attract. Here's my offers. And then it writes out funnel ideas. Okay, well, here's funnels that have already made $10 million or more, right? How can we make it similar to what's already worked? And then it'll, just talk back and forth with ChatGPT, and it'll write the whole entire funnel for you. And then it gives you the ad script or the VSL script, where all you have to do is basically repeat the highly converting, script that actually has already worked in the past specifically for your type of business. And then all these people are just crushing it.
And I was saying, and then they wonder why people came out of nowhere in 2 years. These people that have been working at this for 10, 15 years that are just gaining recognition now, and then you got guys that came out of nowhere in 2 years. This is how they came out of nowhere in 2 years. They've embraced technology. They've embraced marketing from a technology standpoint. They've embraced all these different aspects of what we have available at our fingertips that's super fast, and they're scaling themselves just as fast, if not faster.
Last night we were sitting in bed getting ready to go to sleep, and Ashley, my girlfriend, was like, we've got a daughter that's 11 months, and she's like, man, I'm trying to figure out variations of what we can start feeding her. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I bet ChatGPT could spit out 100 things. Yeah. And she's like, do it. And then I just said, hey, we got 11-month-old daughter. We're trying to, if we feel like we're feeding her a lot of the same stuff, we want to give different variations. Spit out 100, different things that we could feed her. Mm-hmm. Did it in seconds.
Yeah. Was it all good stuff? Did you fact check it?
Yeah. It was really good stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it was stuff we were already feeding her, but there was stuff that we did not ever think about.
Yeah. No, I mean, so then in that aspect, it's useful for everyday life, not even business. You just use it as a coach for your personal life. Like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me figure this out? And so it's got answers. And so it's got some really good, really good implementation, I guess. But I tend to focus on the scary stuff. And for me, it scares me more than it excites me. But I know if you leverage it and use it correctly, I think it's awesome. Personally, overall, I think it's perfect.
Are you in crypto at all?
Very little.
Okay.
I got on Coinbase a year and a half ago. There was some stuff that was running, and I had a buddy of mine that was really big into it, had made some decent money, and he's like, hey, you got to get into this, you got to get into this. So I basically got on the wrong end. I basically have got more invested than I have got out of it. But unless you sell it, you don't know what it's going to do. So I just let it sit there. And every 2 or 3 months, I'll pull it up and just see what it's doing. And it's been riding about the same for 2 or 3 months. So I never got into Bitcoin. I wish I would have, probably to some degree, back when it was really, really cheap. But even buying it at 3,000, 6,000, 16,000, hoping for it to go to 60, I'm not a player in that game. So
I've got 2 stories here, good stories. I would say both bad. And in high school, I think I was a freshman in high school, and history class, we had a history class, and they were trying to teach us how to get on the stock market. It was a 1-day thing, and
I remember that.
You could play with virtual money, fake money. They give you $50,000.
Okay.
I didn't know. I never even heard of Bitcoin, but it was a very lucky thing. And basically, you would go invest that $50,000, and then at the end of the year, they'd go and check on it to see who made the most money. I put $50,000 into Bitcoin. And I want to say this was 2015 of fake money on one of these stock market things, or where you could trade, and it was $276,000 or something like that by the end of the year, to where I crushed the whole entire class. Where if that was real money, I would have crushed it. Yeah. So that was the first story. Bummer.
Yeah.
And then I was an electrician in 2018, 2019. And I was so desperate to get rich. I was so desperate to make more money. And I'd get on social media and I'd see all these guys, right? These frauds. And I wanted to make a lot of money, and they sell you the dream. They got the cars, the jets, they're doing drop shipping. Drop shipping is always probably one of the first ones. So I got scammed on drop shipping, but I got on this crypto one, and I mean, I'm such an idiot, but I had my blinders on. And it's embarrassing. I don't. You're
just hyper focused. So they are blinders, but it's because you're just so singularly focused.
Yeah, and it was a Ponzi scheme, is what it was. And they were trying to get me to get other people, which luckily I did not get other people, because I was like, I need to make money before I tell anybody about this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was such a legit operation that looked so official. They must have been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
So I was putting this, they were telling me, it's, I don't even know anything about crypto at that point, so it's all gibberish anyways.
Yeah.
So, I was making $28,000 a year at the time. So I was making really not a lot of money whatsoever.
Right.
And I was putting money into, I would walk into gas stations with $500 in my hand or $1,000 in my hand. And I would start feeding $100 bills into these Bitcoin machines. They have Bitcoin ATMs.
Okay. I've seen those. Yeah.
And they were at the door, and I'd be at the machine putting, and this is in 2018, and I'd be putting hundreds of dollars into these machines, and people would stop me and be like, "Oh, I've never even seen somebody use one of these machines. What are you even doing that for?" I didn't really have a great answer for them, other than I'm just really risking it all right now. Yeah. And I think what I was doing is I was putting my money straight into this guy's Bitcoin wallet, and then at the time, I bet Bitcoin was it was cheap. I would say it was $7,000. It was around 2018, but it was pretty cheap. And they kept on trying to get you to put more money in, and it was always another thing to keep me in it, right? And then I was like, man, I don't have my old Snapchat, but I created a video, I remember, and I'm like, man, I'm creating this video right now because I'm getting ready to go, put money in this machine. I'm really, I just hope it works out for me. I hope it changes my life, And I would create that video on purpose so I could look back one day and be like, man, that was the right decision.
Right.
That was the wrong decision.
Right.
And it was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And I got, they were sending me envelopes full of money, pictures. Hey, we're going to get this sent out. Can you get my, your address, that sort of thing. I was getting ready to quit my job. That's how official I thought it was. and I lost like $5,000, which again, I'm a complete idiot. Let's get that straight.
You're a gambler at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I wouldn't call it stupid or an idiot. I'd just say, hey, I was risking it all, because there's a lot of people that would have looked at that situation and been like, because say that was a success. Say it paid off. Well, then it's a great story, right? Hey, I got $100 million now because I put $5,000 in this Bitcoin machine. But because you failed, it makes you an idiot. But it's not true. The fact that you even risked it in the first place, that you risked it on yourself, like you gambled, that makes you smart. It makes you where you are today because of that. Because everybody else who never would have even tried it didn't learn from any failure or learn from any success or anything, because they never took any risks.
Yeah, and I was making $2,000 a month at the time, $2,000 a month, and I lost about $6,000. So that was months worth of work for me, of working hard labor.
Yeah.
Where it was like, man, I was at a dark place once I got screwed, and then now it's just like, the $5,000 is really nothing that I lost, but it's all relative to actually how much money you're making. But that was a kind of a shitty thing. That was when I started to get into crypto. Yeah. And then it kind of scared me off. And
are you into it at all still, or?
I went to a mastermind. The first mastermind that I went to was a yacht mastermind. Some of these guys were up like $3 million on crypto, and this was when it was really pumping. And I wasn't in crypto whatsoever. And something motivated me to get into crypto as soon as I got home. And I was seeing like TikTok videos about Shiba.
Which I got that. I got Shiba, yeah. And so, I thought I was buying it cheap, and now it's even so much cheaper. But that's enticing. Then you're like, maybe I should buy some more, because if it even goes back to where it was when I bought it, I'll be doing good. But
so people were talking about it, and they were like, "Oh, so you need to put your money in Shiba." And then I was like, "Nah, I'm not going to do it." And then I watched it skyrocket overnight. And then I had a customer of my junk removal business who was talking about it, and he said he had money in it, and I was like, I'm going to go put $20,000 in there and see what happens. Again, I take big risks.
Yep.
So I put $20,000 in there, knowing nothing about it whatsoever, 100% gambling. And I woke up the next morning, $43,000, and I sold it.
Yeah.
So that was like 100% luck. Can't replicate that.
That was like day trading with crypto.
Yeah.
Which have you ever seen those sites that actually watch the whales, the whales of crypto and what they're investing in and how they're manipulating the sites and stuff? If I ever got smart enough to actually, I think, monitor it on that level, you can make some good money in it, I do believe. But I mean, it's like day trading. Like, you got to be on top of it all the time. And personally, I've always had a mental block with investing in something that didn't have a tangible good. And being that it's just imaginary, and yes, you can make money on it, I just have a problem. There's no asset there. There's no physical thing that I can hang my success or my hat on. It's there, and then it's gone. Or overnight, you have a ton of it. And you're like, what do I do with it now? You know what I mean? Do I reinvest it? Do I cash it out? Can I turn it to money? So I've always had this block in my head and this probably the difference in our age, you know what I mean? It's just like, I can't invest in that, because what do I really have? I have this fake imaginary coin. It's not even a coin. They call it a coin. It's just an imaginary number, But I can see that people make a lot of money in it.
Another thing like AI, nobody understands, me talking to my grandma and grandpa about Bitcoin, it's so far over their head, or just older people in general. This isn't going to be a currency whatsoever. Right. Maybe they're all into gold, something tangible.
Silver, yeah.
I think I send a lot of bank wires. I get a lot of bank wires, and it's always like, it just seems like a lot more difficult these days. I don't know what it was like years ago, but like, I'll walk in the bank. I can't just walk in at 4 p.m. and say, hey, I need to send a wire. And maybe it's my actual branch or bank, the type of bank.
Yeah.
But they might say, hey, nobody's here to help you do that. You'll need to schedule a time. Well, I don't want to schedule a time. And then, I could go send one online. But then it's like, then they got to approve you and this and that. And then you're dealing with technology where, like, I could send Bitcoin, you're going to get it in a second.
One of the biggest things that I did in regards to that was I was banking a lot with a credit union when I first got started. And I actually got the credit union in trouble because they were doing some commercial lending that they weren't supposed to be doing. But I shifted from local banks and from credit unions to a business bank, to an actual business bank, where they treated me for who I was and not just a number. And I know wire transfers, like at the credit union, they're like, you got to come in, you got to fill all this paperwork out, we got to submit it, da 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 da. I can literally email or call my banker she'll ask for my social security number and maybe one question, and they'll just do it over the phone. Like I can send wires because they're used to doing business. It's a business bank. It's what they understand. That's the way it works. And once you gain a relationship with them, I would not have been able to scale to where I have today had I not moved to that business bank. It was one of the best decisions. And then proving myself to the bank's vice president, and when I would take gambles, because I'm like you, I'm a gambling man, but I can gamble on myself. And the reason I gamble on myself is because it's up to me to fail. It's up to me to succeed. And I will 99.9% of the time, I will always gamble on myself because I know what I can do. So if I'd go buy, like, hey, I need to buy this truck, because one of the things I used to do was buy and flip trucks. There was a time when these old Peterbilts were really hot, and I knew the configurations that people were looking for, and we were flying out to California because at the time California's regulations were shutting these trucks down, and they had to sell them. They no longer would re-register them in the state of California. So we would fly out to California and buy these trucks for some brokers that I still talk to today, actually, back before they knew these trucks were going for a lot of money in the Midwest. I might go out there and buy a truck for like $25,000, $30,000. And they would already have like put some bells and whistles on it, cleaned it up a little bit, whatever. We would drive them back. We'd go through them mechanically, make sure mechanically they were sound, all the leaks were fixed, everything was good. And then we'd go through the aesthetics and we'd clean up some of the aesthetics. And then I might sell that truck for $55,000, $65,000 in like a week. Boom, just flip it right back out. Well, I would call my banker and I'd be like, hey, I want a credit line so that I can buy these trucks. Well, hey, come on in. Let's sit down and have a conversation. So we come in, we sit down. The first time, it's like, I need some collateral. The second time is like, I need like 50% collateral. The third time, it's like, dude, what do you need? Whatever you need, because you proved yourself. But working with an institution that treats you like that has been pivotal in scaling, because I want somebody to treat me for me. I don't want somebody to treat me like a number. If I've been doing a lot of business for you and you're pushing a lot of money through that bank, I don't want to be treated like a number. I want to be treated for who I am and what I've done with you guys.
So how do you find those relationships? Maybe not even banking, but just anything in general.
I think it is a game of chance, and it's a game of numbers. The more you explore, the more you find. And so for every one quality relationship I have, I've probably walked away from 10 others. That, too many red flags. They turned out to be nothing. They turned out to be frauds. They turned out to be not very good people. I also try to align myself with people who not only have good business practices and standards, but morally are not corrupt. Because I don't care if you are killing it on the business side. If you are morally corrupt, you cheat on your wife, you cheat on your girlfriend, you cheat on taxes, you cheat on whatever, I don't want anything to do with you, because I don't care about the money. I care about the person. I invest in people. I don't invest in things. I invest in people, and character plays into that a lot. So I want to brag about you a little bit for a second.
I think what I think that you do really good at is like, you posted the video. I didn't even know who you were. You posted the video, and then I was like, oh, this guy shared my content. That was pretty nice. Then we started chatting via DM, and then I was going to go to a car show, and I said, hey, are you going to go to this? And you were like, no, but I will go.
I moved mountains to be there.
And there was an hour and a half drive, and you drove your McLaren an hour and a half away in the rain. Yeah, and then we got there. It was pretty cold, too. Yeah. It wasn't, it's not like there was crazy amount of cars, but you showed up, you said what's up, we talked, that sort of thing, went out to lunch. Again, you've been very persistent, but I can tell that you're very persistent at building relationships, finding the right relationships, because those relationships could take you places.
I have met people in the past. I'm going to use one example in particular. This guy named Dan Soul out of Kansas City. He owns a trucking company. When I was in auto hauling, I was hauling for myself. I was struggling at the time. I was using a broker to get all my loads. They were taking quite a bit of money from me, like 30% of everything I took in. But all the expenses, everything were on me. That's just their take for handing me the work. I was at a stop. I was picking up some rail. They were trucks for BNSF that were being outfitted. And there was this guy with this really nice Peterbilt in this truck. He was tall dude, tats, fingertips to his ankles, man, up his neck, rough looking dude. And I walked by, seen him. I said, hey, really like your trucks, beautiful truck. And he's like, hey, man. He just starts talking to me. He's like, who are you picking up for? We get to talking, right? Back and forth. We're just BSing. Not my kind of person, generally speaking. Like, we visually probably have nothing in common. And he gives me his card and says, hey, I'm out of Kansas City, and it's just me. I got some work up here. If you've got work out of St. Louis, that's the lane I like to run. Maybe we can switch things back and forth. Like, I'll take some of yours, you'll take some of mine. I'm very guarded about my stuff, so I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, right? 3 years goes by. I'm driving down 70, going from Kansas City to St. Louis, and I see his truck go the other way, loaded. I'm like, oh crap, there's that guy I talked to like years ago. Wonder what he's up to. So I go in my wallet, I find that card that's still in there, I pull it out, I give him a call. He answers the phone, he's like, hello? I'm like, hey Dan, this is so-and-so, da-da-da. And he's like, just doesn't understand who is this? And I reiterate who I am. He understands. Long story short, that turned into probably $2 million worth of business over the next 2-3 years, and a best friend out of it. I've got a very, very good friend out of it. So those relationships that I work to try to build and pick people apart and figure out is because the quality of people I want around me in my circle, my standards are super high because I hold myself at a really high standard. So I don't want people around me that are going to mess up my objective, that are going to mess up my goal. And even I know people probably put you down because of your age and the amount of years you have in business, but the strides that you've made in the short period of time you have and how you still keep grinding and you still keep pushing, I recognize that in you. And that's the kind of people, I don't care that you've not been doing this for 20 years. That makes no difference to me. You've accomplished more in 4 years or whatever than most people have in 20 years. And if you keep that grind up for the next 20, you're going to be untouchable. And I'm going to be thankful to be like, hey, I know that guy.
Right. I saw him here at 23 years old.
Correct.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it's so easy for me to compare myself to older people who are, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, 70 years old, who have been in business. And I'm like, why am I not there?
Right.
But sometimes I got to slap myself in the face for a second and be like, hey, I just started.
It's human nature.
I'm 23 years old.
We want to compare ourselves. We want to compete. You're a competitive person, it seems like. I'm a competitive person, but I'm a patient person. And I wasn't always a patient person. But I learned that discipline and I laugh at the story, at the journey, because when people are like, man, this is going to be a long road. You got to do this for every single day for the next 2 years. At least that's what I did to gain traction. Because I have a whole set of tools that some other people don't have when they started that, I go, okay, I'm fine with a 2-year story, but I bet I can do that in a year. And I know I can do that in a year because I have all these other tools to fast track me that you didn't have. So I'm going to take the knowledge you gave me and I'm going to take the tools I have and then I'm going to double the results on that. And I do that over and over and over again. I do it with relationships. I do it with business. But I always stick to the same set of standards and principles. And rather I'm looking at talking to somebody and doing something with them, a collaboration or whatever, or I'm just wanting a friend around me, somebody who is a confidant, somebody that I can call and say, hey, I got this going on. I've got friends of mine that are multi-millionaires. We do nothing together other than we're friends. And I appreciate them very, very much. I've consoled in them when I had issues. They've called me. I mean, these guys are in their 60s, 70s, and they have done huge things. And the first person they call when they have a problem in their family, like somebody like that hurt their heart, like bad, they call me. I think a lot about that. I'm like, wow, you thought to call me? Of anybody you could have called, you called me. Well, I trust you. That means a lot to me. Those kind of relationships transcend time. That means something to me. That's what I look for in my circle.
So you talk about personal development, and it seems like you're trying to get into that side of things because a lot of people lack that. Mindset is a big thing that you talk about as well. What is the right mindset to become a winner in entrepreneurship?
So I think that's a pretty loaded question, and obviously it's on a case-by-case basis, but as a general rule of thumb, I think people are closed-minded. I think that they look at things very objectively, and they always look at the downside, and they never look at the upside. They never want to gamble on themselves, and they don't keep an open mind to the possibilities of what could be. I think a good mindset for most people is, if say my objective is to just be successful. A lot of people start out wanting money. They say, I want to make $1 million. That's a good benchmark, right? A lot of people who've made nothing. I know I was there at one point in time. I set that benchmark. I want to make $1 million. What I have found from a mindset is, instead of chasing $1 million goal, what are you trying to do? Okay, I'm doing trucking in my instance. Well, let me go do trucking is better than anybody else around. I'm going to be the best person. Okay, what part of trucking is lacking? Customer service sucks. People, everything is what it is. I'll be cheap, and then I don't make service. Well, then you don't make service, and this client didn't get their stuff delivered. Now their client is ticked at them. But the only option that said client has is this trucking company. So then you come in and you say, hey, I'm going to offer you this awesome service, but it costs a little bit more money. We can't do that. Okay, that's fine. Well, I'll offer it to you. What's this guy paying? Okay, I'll offer it to you at this guy's price, and then give me a month. If you still like my service, we're going to go to my price. If we don't, then we'll move on down the road. My mindset is, if you just give me that time, I hope you just give me that ability to show you what I'm talking about, I can show it to you. So I think having an open mindset that anything is capable, and that you can achieve great things if you just try, I think is really, really important. I just think people are closed-minded. They lack ambition, and they lack drive, confidence, consistency. Everybody wants everything right now. They don't want to wait, and it's a real problem. And so on the personal development side, one of the first things that we actually look at is people's, like, literally, what is are you married? Do you have a significant other? What's your day-to-day look like? What's your morning routine? What kind of foods you're eating? Do you go to the gym? Because the gym isn't just about physical fitness. It's also about mental. It's probably more mental than it is physical. The most fit people you see probably struggle extremely bad mentally. And the reason that they look as good as they do is because they put all of that focus into working out, and the muscle building and all that was just a byproduct because they were putting so much energy. And because there's a lot of people who are like, I don't even think clear unless I'm just pushing weight. That's when I can just, everything goes away and I can just push, get the blood flowing, get my endorphins going. That's when I can think. And then, of course, they're going to have bigger muscles and they're going to be in good shape because they just put that drive into something that created that. Well, people put drive into business. They're super successful. Why are they super successful? Because their mindset was, I want to take myself and dive into this wholeheartedly, 100%, take all the risk, I'll get all the reward, or I'll fail and I'll learn trying, right? And then they succeed. So when I say mindset's multifaceted, everything I just said,
of course,
case by case basis, but I think generally speaking, on a small scale, is truly opening your mind. I went to an event recently, I think you've seen, down in Arizona. And when I went into that room, I was like, okay, some of these people are just groupies. Some of them are pretty loud, and they're interacting with the speakers, and they're interacting with the crowd. There wasn't a person in there that wasn't doing that. So I'm like, it isn't just groupies, because these guys up here that are with me, I've never been here before. These guys, some of these guys I talked to have been here 10 times. So they came back 9 times. You know what I mean? All these other people that were over here yelling, that might have been their first time, but they all had the same energy. They all believed in the message. They all believed in the purpose. They all believed in what was going on in that room. The energy was infectious.
So I want to dive deep into that because
Yeah.
I wish you would have asked me to go because I would have went.
So I didn't on purpose.
Okay.
Because my wife actually got mad at me. If she sees this, she's going to get mad at me because she goes, you didn't invite me. And I said, I didn't invite anybody. I didn't even tell anybody because I wanted to take this journey, this trip by myself real quick and see what it was all about. Because when I go do something like that, and I can just, all I have to worry about is what I'm doing and what I'm getting
And
out
yourself,
of it.
yeah.
Myself. I don't have to worry if you're doing okay. Do you want to go do something? Are you hungry? Are you this? I won't even freaking eat. I was just running around Arizona, looking at the cactuses, thinking about what I was going to do. I ran to their facility 2 miles down the road. Literally took a run the night before just to go by and take a look at the facility and see how everything was laid out and kind of do some recon work. So then when I came in the next day, I wasn't just looking around like, where do you go? What do you do? And then I actually met some of them coming out that were doing pregame for the next day. So they come down, and then I'm shaking hands, talking to them, saying, hey, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And so I didn't invite anybody. I really thought about calling you. I did, because I'm like, I bet he would do this.
Because you asked me like a few weeks prior, hey, is there any events coming up that you know about? And I was like, I'm and I love Andy Elliott's content, and I recently got into the gym, and I've always been like the dad bod, just like, but he pulled a guy up on stage and said, hey, take your shirt off right now. I'm sure you feel pretty uncomfortable, don't you? And then I was like, man, what if I got pulled on the stage and they told me that? I'd be pretty damn embarrassed, and I'd make sure that I got my ass in the gym. Well, good thing I wasn't on that stage. Now let me use that as an example, but he's got an incredible content. I love the energy.
It's a real energy too. I mean, there was times when he was talking and he'd whip to the right, and I was just tables like this, and it was one table in front of me and then me. And he'd whip to the right and stare right in my eyes while he's talking. Never skip a beat. And I mean, like, it wasn't just like a second. It'd be like 10 seconds. And I just stared back at him because I'm like, if I break concentration, I'm going to look like a punk. I can't look like a punk, right? So, and what's funny is since then, like, he's put content up, and I'll put on there, I know you've seen me, and you're going to know who I am real soon. And he'll like and respond to it. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Because one of his guys has been in touch with me like multiple times a day, and they want you to come be part of the brotherhood and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What is that? the Elliott Army or what?
Well,
what
there's
is
that, and then there's like an inner circle, and then there's obviously it's a pay-to-play system. It's you pay to get close to people. That's just the way it is. They've elevated themselves to that level, and that's what it is. And I have no problem with that. That's hopefully one day we're all doing that.
They're playing the game.
They're playing the game. For me, I have this. I'm like a Goggins to some degree. I have this competition with myself where I don't feel like I'm worthy. So like you talk about being fit. I couldn't have started this journey of actually putting my face out on the internet until I put over a year and a half in the gym to where I felt like if Andy would have pulled me on that stage and said, take your shirt off, I'd have flexed a six pack and said, what's up? And then showed him the picture that I used to be almost 300 pounds.
Right.
And been like, I went from this to this, and I never felt worthy enough to even show him my face or come to something like this until I felt like I was ready. Like I had done all the homework. I had done all the mental mastermind myself, but physically I didn't represent that. And it's mind, body, and soul. You got to be there in all three aspects, right? And I didn't have the right physique. I wasn't representing myself the way that I seen myself in my head until I got to that point. I couldn't be there. So he's got an energy and a purpose and a message.
Intentional.
Very intentional. And he's a salesman. And I seen him do some sales, but I could walk right through that. Like I seen that part. But the people who are new to this, that have never been around any of this, that are trying to start their journey, but they were eating it up. There was one guy in front of me threw his credit card on the stage, like literally chucked it at him. And I'm like, that's a little much.
Yeah. Well, I think that how many people were there, you think?
About 420, they said.
420 people in that.
And it's a very small area, yes.
Huh.
We were packed in there.
And how much did that cost?
I paid $2,000 for VIP.
$2,000, man.
So
he made some...
general admission, well, it gets better. So general admission was $1,000. VIP was $2,000. And then he had these couches around the stage that he called VIP that were $6,000. Okay? Everybody sitting in those seats, I recognize as being part of the brotherhood or somebody that is in his inner circle. But I don't think they all started that way. And I think that since they had developed his programs and started following him, they implemented that stuff and it got them to scale to the point where they could afford to do that comfortably and wanted to be close to him because they believe in the message and they're there to support him and validate what he's got going on. And I don't just want to say him, it's him and his wife. It's him and Jacqueline, like together as a pair, and his entire team. They're incredible people. And this was just my first encounter with him other than just kind of watching him on the internet and stuff like that. I wanted to go to see if it was all BS or if there was some truth about it. Because I talked to some people that said if they went to 10 events, 9 of them just took my money and 2 of them might have had some content that were worth it,
Okay, so what I was going to say was like I feel like if there's 400 people there, there's not one person, based on the videos that I see, I haven't seen them outside of the cameras, like every single person probably walked out of there with some energy, some motivation, and we're like, my money was well spent.
Yeah. And so like halfway through before lunch, they then posted a special offer for another event with some tickets to that and these online training courses and for like, it was normally maybe $2,000 or something online, but we're gonna do it for $997 for all you guys, but we're only taking 200 people. So what did they create? They created scarcity. They pushed everybody and said, if you leave this room right now, the deal's off the table. And I mean, he filled almost every single one of those spots. The funny part is, whereas he was selling those people, he wasn't selling them BS. The stuff that they'll gain from what they got is stuff that they will use. It's stuff that personally will help them and professionally will help them. It's not snake oil. It was an actual message. It was actual techniques. I took so much away from the framework of a sale from that. And then also he had Ryan up there, Ryan Stewman, which is, the dude's awesome. And he had a lot of really, really good stuff to talk about on the internet, algorithms and weights and how things work and all that kind of stuff. I learned.
Got any big takeaways for us?
What's funny is, and I told people this after I came back, was I took away a lot of validation from it because a lot of the stuff that they were preaching and doing, I have been doing my whole life, but I didn't know if I was doing it right, and some of it worked and some of it didn't. And I didn't see everybody doing the things I was doing, but I stuck to my morals and I stuck to my practices because I felt like that's what was right. Well, when they started pushing all this stuff and I could see the paradox between what he and his team were doing and his wife and me and my wife and what my team does, I was like, are we siblings from different parents or something? Like, this is crazy. Like, we really have that much in common. And if he's gained the success he has, which is, I think, over $100 million at this point, and he's got a goal set for $1 billion by the end of 24, and I think he'll hit it, no problem, that I know I'm on the right track to doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that's why, to circle all the way back around to what you originally said, I feel like mindset-wise, if you just do what's right, the money will follow. Quit chasing the money. Don't chase the $1 million idea. Focus on the process. Focus on doing what's right. Focus on being a good person. You got to have the art of walking away. And sometimes I've lost a lot of money. You've lost money, like you were talking about. I've lost some deals, some business ventures that went south. I lost a lot of time and a lot of money, and I was able to smile with a tear in my eye and say, hey, this just isn't going to work for me no more. I got to walk away from this. This was a massive learning experience for me, and I'll never replicate it. But I have to walk away. I have to rebuild. And I need to do that by myself right now. So
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Mr. Bobby Guiney. You can find me on Facebook at Mr. Robert Guiney. And you can find me on TikTok, Mr. Bobby Guiney as well.
I love it, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yep. We'll see you guys on the next one.